Just so y'all know, there's a storm that just popped up out of nowhere. We had a
Oh,
0% chance of
ew.
rain. It was very sunny and pretty, and now it's all cloudy and pretty, but I'm hearing thunder. So
It is currently pouring outside with thunder and lightning. So
very nice. So I guess we'll see if there's an episode Sunday or if I'm not going to complete that and I'm going to knock on wood.
knock on wood, everybody.
I did. I knocked on wood. If you're listening to this, then clearly it's fine. Everything worked out. But if not, you'll see an apology on our Facebook and Instagram and all those places. Anywho, I'm pretty sure I told y'all earlier or this morning whenever I was up at the witching hour, but I'm pretty sure Mika's using the litter box, which I'm not mad about, other than she's tracking
Smart
litter.
cookie.
I know, but also I want to catch it. So I'm contemplating on buying a little camera to put in where the litter box is so I can watch and see if she
Do
uses it.
it.
Yeah, so we'll see. We have a suspicion for like the 20 people that listen to this podcast who we love and appreciate, and thank you so much. We have a suspicion that my little dog is using our litter robot, and we put it together over the past few days, my fiance and I, that she is not wanting to go outside recently, like the past few days, which is strange. We have to like pick her up and put her outside. Then I also noticed that like she'll crawl under the covers and get under the sheets and cuddle with me. I noticed the other day that there was like sand or something in the bed. So Justin was already asleep. I couldn't change the covers or the sheets. So I went ahead and like dusted it off and went to sleep. I didn't think about it again. But Cheston came in there this morning and said he saw I was awake. He's like, "Oh, good. I need to talk to you about something," which is not normal. And he said that he heard our sliding door like open and like hit the wood a little bit, which causes it's not loud, but it's a thump you hear throughout the house sometimes. So he noticed that the cat was in the living room. So he goes into the office and he sees Mika is like walking out and freezes like oh shit, I just got caught. So he checks the litter where the litter robot is because he's thinking maybe she got into something in there, but there's just one turd in the litter robot, and the cat hasn't moved since he passed the cat.
What?
So I don't know if she's using the litter robot. That's fine. I'm not upset about it. But now I can't. I mean, I can't picture how she's climbing up in there. I imagine she looks dorky. She's only like 14 pounds, maybe 15, which the cool thing about litter robot is it weighs your animal. But the problem is that they weigh the same. So I can't tell if it was like 20 pounds going
Mm,
in there, I would know, oh yeah, she's definitely using a litter robot. But they're both like 13, 14 pounds. So I don't know. Anywho, she's smart. I'm not mad about it. I'm not excited about litter being tracked places it's not usually tracked.
yeah.
That's kind of
That
gross. It
that was
grossed me
my
out
gripe too.
whenever I made the realization, connected the dots at 3 a.m., I was like, this is not cute.
No.
Anywho, I hope you're both well.
Didn't train her though. That's kind of wild.
I know. I was talking to my grandma about it, and she goes, well, maybe it's because she sees the cat go in there because that office is like the dog bedroom whenever we're not home. So they go
Mhm.
in there. We used to crate them, but now that they're older and we have an extra bedroom slash my office, I just put them in there so they can wander. They don't really have accidents or anything. So it's not a big deal. And they're confined to that one area. So I know they're not getting into something they're not supposed to. But
Mhm.
go her, but also no tanks. I don't know. She's smart and she's sassy and drives me crazy.
And that's why I love her.
I know. Oh my gosh. She is our resident cryptid, a gargremlin, in the words of Atlas. She's
Yes, yes, she is.
a little gargoyle gremlin, little cute
Fruit bat.
thing. Fruit bat, yes. She's a skipper key. I'll have to post a picture on Instagram if people want to see a picture of her. So let me know wherever, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'll post a picture of her if y'all want. She's really cute. She's a pain in the ass though. Anyway, now that we've spent, I don't know, 6 minutes talking about my dog pooping in a litter box, I guess we should probably get a move on. So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's episode of Can You Repeat That podcast? We're your hosts. My name is Leslie.
My name's Chantelle.
And I am Atlas. Music, 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 theme song, music, music, theme song.
Okay, today I have a doozy of a story. It's pretty popular. It's recent, compared to the majority of history. I have a few different sources. They'll be listed in the show notes, but I am following the format of The Perfect Wife on Hulu because I really like how they did that. So I'm kind of using the same way that they introduced the story and pulling from that a bit, but I'm also pulling from court documents and a couple of other articles. With that being said, have either of you heard of Sherri Papini?
Oh, yeah.
I want to say this sounds familiar.
That would be because you did the real life Gone Girl, and this is the case that I was confusing with yours.
Oh.
Yes.
Ooh,
So
I'm excited.
that's a word to describe this story, I guess. Yeah, I'm excited to tell you the story. I put a lot of effort into this. So I put a lot of effort in all the stories, but this one is like 10 out of 10 in my opinion. So the morning of November 2nd, 2016 started like any other for the Papini family. Loving husband Keith Papini left for work while his wife Sherri took their kids, Tyler, 5 at the time, and Violet, 3, to daycare. Sherri had worked her way up in the AT&T company as an account executive before becoming a stay-at-home mom and a homemaker. Now her days revolved around her children and her husband, which she adored. Around 11 a.m., Sherri texted her husband asking if he would be coming home for lunch that day, but due to a busy day, he responded saying, "Sorry, long day," and hadn't heard from her the rest of the day. By 5 p.m., Keith made it home and noticed that his wife and 2 kids weren't at home like they usually were. He called the daycare and asked if Sherri had picked up the kids, to which they said no, and they were still there. Keith used the Find My Phone app and located her phone half a mile down the road with her headphones wrapped around and hair. He took a photo, grabbed the phone, and reported his wife missing to the authorities. Agents arrived on scene and weren't able to find any other evidence of clues as to where Sherri had disappeared to. Like most cases, suspicion immediately went towards Keith, and the investigators turned to their neighbors for some answers. While some neighbors reported no suspicious behavior or arguing from the couple, there were other reports which stated that Keith was off, were strange, and that Sherri put on a show to reflect a perfect marriage online and in person. Despite what seemed like the community going against him, Keith gave agents access to their home, their phones, their computers, laptops, tablets, whatever they needed, and never once asked for a lawyer. With conflicting information given by the community, investigators turned to the couple's family and friends asking the same questions. Did they argue? Did they throw hands? Again, conflicting information surfaced. I'm gonna go slow for the next couple sentences because it's very he said, she said. So, Jennifer Harrison, Sherri's best friend, told investigators that they had gone to lunch a month prior to her disappearance, where Sherri had told her that Keith has said if she ever tried to leave him, that he would kill her, chop her up, and bury her in the backyard.
Hell nah.
Okay.
In the same conversation, literally the next sentence, Jennifer also stated that Sherri tended to be dramatic and exaggerate. That's a heck of an exaggeration.
That's a huge exaggeration. But okay.
Yeah.
Another friend, Nicole McDonald, told detectives that Sherri told her that Keith had previously hit her and given her a black eye during an argument. Agents questioned Keith about the black eye she had received from him, to which he explained that while at a friend's house, they were playing, get ready for this, Fruit Ninja on the Wii, whenever he pulled back his arm and smacked her in the face. While he did say he made some distasteful comments, like, quote, she didn't put the dishes away. Eek.
Ew.
Ugh.
Yeah, he did provide names of the friends that witnessed the Wii assault and confirmed the story with them.
The Wii assault.
Yeah. I was watching the documentary and he said they were playing Fruit Ninja and my mind went, whoa. And then he said we, and then my mind went, oh. So we assault seemed fitting in that sentence.
Who
I
do we
love
assault? Everyone.
I too am a victim of a we assault.
I feel like I may have we assaulted at one
Oh.
point.
I have probably we assaulted as well. And probably we assaulted a TV once or
I
twice.
did not wear those wrist straps.
No. Agents would say in the Hulu documentary, Perfect Wife, The Mystery Disappearance of Sherri Papini, that the more people they spoke with, the more they started at square one. So they were just getting a lot of conflicting stories from family, friends, or I'm going to say Keith, but not because Keith was flip-flopping on what he was saying, but what he was saying just didn't match what others were saying half the time. While searching the home, detectives found Sherri's diary dating back to 2011 with entries that ranged from I never thought I would find myself being the kind of wife in a more old-fashioned role to gushing about how she loves her life and how that it works for them. Meanwhile, the local community took Sherri's story and got to work airing news broadcasts, forming search and rescue teams of 250 or more people, and setting up monetary rewards for information up to $50,000 USD. By the 7th, 5 days since she had last been seen, Sherri's story had grabbed national attention, which is kind of, I'll get to this later on, but kind of a point of contention. It's like pretty girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, white woman goes missing and gets tons of media attention. Whereas people of the opposite demographic can barely get on the local news. Meanwhile, it's been 5 days and they have all kinds of resources trying to locate her. Speaking of, I should probably send y'all photos of her. I'll send them right now. The local authorities contacted the FBI for assistance. Though it had been less than a week since Sherri vanished without a trace, there were already several internet theories ranging from sex trafficking to murder or that she willingly disappeared. I'm going to kind of rapid fire some dates and their significance. I mean, I'm not going to go too fast, but a lot of dates headed your way. November 9th, Keith passed his polygraph and is no longer a suspect. The investigators clearing Keith meant they focused on two other possibilities. Sherri was abducted by a stranger, or she walked out willingly. Now, Sherri was described by literally everyone who knew her as, quote, supermom. She loved her children and she showed it. Her family believes that there was no possible way Sherri just left her kids. November 13th, the family hires their own private investigator. Keith's friends and family are conducting their own investigation aside from the police and FBI, as they feel the police are not on top of it as they should be. Over the next couple of weeks, they make timelines and look at previous relationships she had, even doing their own surveillance where they felt necessary, but still no luck. November 17th, an anonymous person sets up www.findsherripapini.com. Whoever set up the website offered ransom for the immediate release of Sherri. However, no luck. At this time, the sheriff's working the case states there's still not enough evidence to definitively say that this is a disappearance and cautions the family to be aware of scams. People were calling them saying, if you give me this much money, or if you put this much money here, we'll release Sherri. So they were trying to keep them from falling for these scams or getting false hope. By November 20th, the sheriff's office confirms that they received more than 400 tips and served more than 20 search warrants. By the end of their investigation, they would receive over 900 tips. The tips coming in were really everywhere, though. Since there was no information on what actually happened, they were getting calls about suspicious men and women of all kinds that could lead the investigation off course. So they weren't very helpful because they didn't have any information. November 22nd, self-described international kidnap and ransom consultant Cameron Gamble states he believes the abductors are still in the decision-making stage. While he won't disclose how much the abductors would receive for handing over Sherri, he says it was 6 figures. That's a lot of money.
I would like 6 figures.
I would
not mind it
also
myself.
like 6 figures. I mean, it doesn't even have to be the high 6 figures.
No,
I'm not that picky.
no.
At this point, the public is really set on running with the abduction theory. Keith also makes many videos pleading with whoever may have taken her, and they are heartbreaking. Like, he's sobbing, he's trying to speak through the tears, and is very clearly going through it, but the public criticized any move he made. Oh, please hold, Justin's home. The public would say it's strange how he would go from crying to seeming like he, quote, enjoyed the attention between interviews, but it's very important to remember that we all handle grief differently. It looks different on everyone. It looks different on everyone, and it's not linear. It's a roller coaster full of ups and downs. So while in interviews, he does go from barely being able to get a word out to seeming fine the next. To me, he really didn't seem suspicious. He looked like a wreck. So the Hulu documentary has all kinds of recordings of the investigations, recordings of the interviews, the investigation in general. So much documentation, which is one reason why I do like this case. So, like this case as in I think it's interesting, just to make that clear. Now, during all of this, the FBI is going through all of Sherri's contacts and connections to find their next suspect. One of these connections was a man named Donovan Miskey, I think is how it's pronounced, and he is states away in Michigan. Detectives set up an interview and want to know all the details of their relationship and the last interaction they had. Miskey would tell detectives 5 years ago he met Sherri at a work conference at the restaurant he ran. He would say that they were extremely connected to each other, and that evening she would go on to him about how abusive her husband Keith was. She was very open with the fact that she was married. She would also tell him that Keith keeps her locked away and physically abuses her. Miskey would also say he could see, let me rewind that. Miskey says he could see through the, quote, damsel in distress act, but continue to keep in contact with her over the next 3 months, playing up their fictional future. Keith discovered the messages and confronted Sherri, and despite being caught by her husband, the two would continue to keep in contact sporadically and even inform each other of when one would be in the other's area. In fact, the day before Sherri went missing, Donovan messaged her that he was in San Francisco and to come see him. Sherri did pass up the request, but not in a "R&R, I've decided to be a decent person and not cheat on my partner" kind of way, but in a "I'm busy tonight, when will you be back in town" kind of way. So she's shitty all the way around as far as relationships go. One of the last messages Sherri sends to Donovan before her disappearance or kidnapping is saying that there may be a solution to life putting roadblocks between the two being together, but that she's, quote, afraid once it happens, I might be too late again. Basically saying that she won't get to him in time before he has like a wife or a girlfriend or something. She's exhausting. Keep in mind, investigators are telling Keith all of this. In this case, like I said, has so much documentation. You can see blow after blow to poor freaking Keith. It's literally in every direction he goes, it's like someone's punching him in the face. He's either being blamed for the disappearance of his wife or is being told his wife doesn't love him anymore and that she's willingly left him while he's on national television pleading for her to be safely returned to their family.
Yeah, and even after he's dismissed as a suspect, he's still getting the accusations and shit thrown in his face.
We'll really get into it. But as far as their kids go, Keith says he wasn't telling them anything for a couple of reasons. One, they're basically babies. They're 3 and 5 and don't understand what any of this means. 2, they have no information at this point. And 3, it's probably less traumatizing to say, mommy's on vacation, she'll be back later, versus mom's gone, especially because they have no idea where she's at or what's going on. They also look into Sherri's previous marriage to a Marine before she met Keith, to which that man described their relationship as, quote, a marriage of convenience. When Keith was questioned on this, Keith would tell the investigators the reason that they were married was because the ex-husband would get paid more for leaving a spouse at home while he was deployed, and she needed insurance benefits for a heart murmur that she had. When speaking with the ex-husband, he said that yes, he was paid more if his spouse was at home and he was deployed, but that she told him she needed insurance due to complications related to regular egg donations.
What?
The two of them never lived together or traveled together. So basically, she was married to the Marine and met Keith, told the Marine, I want a divorce, and married Keith. At this point in the investigation, police are still leaning towards Sherri hiding or willingly being missing, but her family, including Keith, have not stopped looking for her and are pleading for her to come home. They are also adamant that she would not leave her kids. Like, she loves them, can't stand to be without them. They're her world. It's now 22 days later, Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, 2016, and there have been no new leads or information regarding Sherri or her whereabouts until a 911 call comes in from a trucker saying he's found a woman on the side of the road, hysterical, begging him to call 911 for help. You can hear the woman in the background of the call asking, did you call 911? I need an ambulance. The dispatcher asks if he can explain what's happening, to which he replies, she says she got kicked out of her boyfriend's. The woman in the background says no. And he goes on to say, her name is Sherri Panini. Then you hear her correct him and he says Papini.
Sherri Panini. That's awesome.
I'm not going to lie. I have typed Papini and said Papini so many times. I have typed Papini. No, Panini. See, it's happening. I've typed Panini or said Panini a couple of times. So now I'm just confusing myself on her name or their name, their last name. So apologies. Kind of contemplating on calling this episode Sherri Panini. But I think a few people wouldn't understand or listen to the episode and send us emails about how we misspelled something. Anywho, Sherri's taken in the hospital where her injuries are documented, which were bruises all over her body, including her legs, arms, back, sides, and face, a rash on her wrist and arm, a broken nose, a brand, like a burn, a brand on her back which says Exodus, a Bible verse that refers to a passage discussing the subject of kidnapping. As well as these injuries, her long blonde hair had been cut above her shoulders. She lost significant weight. Her ribs were visible, Keith says, and she seemed to have suffered severe psychological torture. Her family, probably feeling 100 things, shocked, excited, and scared, got to her side as quickly as they could. From the moment police tried to speak with her prior to her family getting there, Sherri would repeat, no one can protect me. I just want my husband. No one found me, and I want my husband. Keith describes seeing his wife for the first time in 22 days and states, quote, I pulled back the curtain, I look at her, And the way she looked at me in that moment, I felt she was lying, end quote. Despite this, he walks over to his wife and gives her what he describes as a, quote, awkward hug, trying to avoid the damage to her body. He says that he remembers feeling sick, not because she was damaged, but because of the pain and torture she went through to receive the harm that's on her body. He says in that moment, quote, any doubt I had just disappeared. I will send a link that it's actually a Reddit post, but it has all the pictures. Just don't read any comments or anything, Shanti. Lots of body damage.
Yikes.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
painful, especially the burns hurt, of course, but there's that gash on her wrist, I believe it
Mhm.
is. That's an ouchie. It's all ouchies, but that looks deep. Keith says during that awkward hug, so he basically put an arm around her waist and put his head on her shoulder and then tried to like wrap his arm around her and he scraped the what is it called? Whenever the crust on it.
Scalp?
Yes. Ew. Ew. Yes, the scab, not the crust. The scab. And that's whenever he was like, there's no way that she's lying. This damage is extensive. Sherri refuses to speak with anyone unless her husband is present and isn't wanting the investigators to write down anything she says. Keith, trying to be the middle ground in the situation, tells her to talk to him, ignore the investigators, and tell him what happened while reassuring her that he will not leave his side. I'm going to read some quotes directly from the United States District Court transcripts that were released on justice.gov. This will be linked in the show notes, and I may skip around for time's sake, but page 7 of the document is where this information I'm going to read is. The document states that both male and female DNA was found on the clothing. Toxicology, good grief. Toxicology results did not show any significant trace of narcotics, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. Papini's abductors told her that law enforcement was involved in her kidnapping. Papini stated, she was laughing at me. No one believes you. Everyone thinks you ran away. No one believes you. Guess what? The buyer's a cop. They're never going to find you. Later in that same interview, Papini expressed concern because officers were writing down that everything that she was saying and repeatedly stated that she did not want to talk with law enforcement. At this time, the officers gave Keith, her husband, a list of questions to ask her and a voice recording or oh my gosh, a recorder. Is there a different word for that I'm not thinking of? I don't think so. Anyway, they gave her a recorder gave them a recorder to record the whole conversation. Papini said 2 Hispanic women had abducted her, although one of the women brought her back. There was an older one and a younger one. They were Hispanic. They spoke Spanish a lot. The Hispanic women always wore masks and short black leather gloves. Papini described the older woman as really mean and the younger one as seemingly reluctantly involved. Papini described the younger abductor as small with curly, long brown hair who spoke more Spanish. Papini described the older woman as taller and fat, had straight, dark, or black hair with gray in it, and a raspy voice. The older abductor hit the younger abductor. Although Papini never saw this happen, she could hear it. Papini stated that her abductors always wore masks, sometimes different colored bandanas, and sometimes lace masks. Papini had a hard time remembering any details about her abductors, including a description of the clothing they were wearing or the words on a hat one of them was wearing. She described the events that occurred at the time she was abducted. A dark-colored SUV containing 2 Hispanic women first drove past her, then backed up when they saw her jogging up the road. One of the women, who had sunglasses on, Papini believed, said, "Can you help me?" Papini walked towards the women, who opened the door of the vehicle to show she had a gun, which Papini described as a little revolver. The woman told Papini to put her phone down. Papini recalled the woman said something to the effect of, "We don't want to kill you." Papini put her phone down and got in the SUV. Papini described the SUV as having tinted windows and either no seats or one seat on the far side and a hump that went up. I'm going to summarize the last little bit here. I really just want to read the entire 55 pages of this document because it's whack. But Sherri tells her husband that she had something over her head, though she doesn't remember what it was that was placed on her. She lost time, so was unsure of how long they were in the car. She suspects she was tased and that she does remember the car reeked like garbage. Once they reached their destination, she was out in a closet with kitty litter to use as a toilet. She described the closet as, quote, containing shelves and a metal pole to which the woman hooked a cable and a chain to, with the other end of the chain hooked around her waist. There was enough length on it for Papini to reach the bed, but she could not reach the door. The chain was unmovable because it was bolted into the ceiling. Papini described how, when she did not listen, Papini described how when she didn't listen to the women, they would lock her in the closet. Papini stated that there were boards on the windows of the room she was kept in. So a very particular closet and room and layout that will actually be the key to this whole investigation. Eventually, the recorded interview with Keith ended and Sherri was released to go home and to be reunited with her children and family. Investigators allowed her some time to recover, but time is valuable in these situations. On November 28th, 4 days after she was found, Keith, Sherri, and a couple of investigators went to her home to try to get more details. Again, Sherri refused to do any interviews unless Keith was present in the room to help ground her and make her feel safe. The interview seemed more successful than the last. On top of the information already given, Sherri would provide more details, which I will read directly from the court documents. Papini could not remember getting into the car. She remembered that she had a pillowcase over her and her head, but had no recollection of how the pillowcase came to be over her head. She stated she woke up already in the vehicle with the pillowcase over her head and it smelled of laundry detergent. Now, if you remember, 4 days prior, she said she smelled garbage. Sus. Maybe I'm looking too deep into that, but laundry detergent and garbage are not even close to the same smell, in my opinion.
Not at all.
No.
When a detective asked if she recalled any music during the trip, Papini answered yes, mariachi music, but she could not remember any commercials playing to help identify the radio station. Papini did not remember getting out of the vehicle, but does remember waking up in a room with her hands zip tied together behind her back and that she chewed through them until they broke. Papini did not clarify how she was able to get her zip-tied wrists from behind her back to the front of her body to be able to chew them off. Initially, this didn't make much sense, but if you're sitting crisscross with your hands behind your back, you can do a little lean and get your hands under your butt and then over your legs and in front of you. But again, it's just these little tiny details that really throw everything off. Sherri also said that Sherri also said any noise she made, her captors would come into the room she was kept to check on her, and that captors often played loud music. Then she backtracks a bit, saying that when the music wasn't playing, her abductors would hear her moving in her room and come rushing in the room to beat her. Despite Sherri saying there was basically always TV or radio on, she cannot identify any stations for either, saying she often fell asleep. But then when detectives asked her to describe any outside sounds, she could hear birds and nothing else, but again, couldn't identify any of the birds. So she says they play loud music all the time. She says if there wasn't loud music, there was TV. But then if she made any noise, they came in there and they beat her. But that she was asleep all the time, but that she could hear the birds, but couldn't identify any music, radio stations, or the bird.
Sus.
Very sus. Very, very sus.
So this investigation just keeps going in circles like it did before she disappeared. With all that being said, this is where we will end part 1. I didn't want to try to rush to make all this fit within an hour. So yeah, we're
That's fair.
maybe about halfway done, but there will be a part 2 that will be released next week. So what are your thoughts so far? What are your theories? Do you think she was kidnapped, sex trafficked, or willingly left? Because those are the top 3 theories. Everybody reacts to trauma and stuff differently, so you can't like just say, oh, well, she can't remember this, so she must be lying. But I don't know. I know what happens. Shanti, do not Google this.
I didn't, I swear.
Okay, don't Google it.
I didn't.
So that way I can finish writing this story because I used that little words to time to speak calculator thing that we have, and it said I was at like 17 minutes, and I was like, ooh, even the Bryce Laspisa case wasn't that long. I think that one ran at 14 minutes. Granted, there was a lot of chit chat in that episode, but Atlas, you're awfully quiet.
Well, I know the story, so
Did you know all those details?
not all the details of when she was questioned after returning, but I know how it turns out.
It's interesting. I guess like I really can't give too many guesses right now because you only know like maybe half of the story so far.
Yeah, right now I'm honestly a little conflicted.
Yep, as you should be. As you should be. From just the information given, if I was hearing this part for the first time, I think she shows that she likes attention, and her little lies throw me off. But yeah, that is all for this one. Who wants to do outro?
It's been a minute. I can do it.
I was gonna say I sound like doo doo, so maybe not me.
Nar, you don't sound like doo doo. You sound like poo poo.
Zing.
Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. As always, you can find any pictures pertaining to the story posted on our Instagram and Twitter at CYRTPod and on our Facebook page. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen, as rating helps us out a ton. If you have any topic suggestions or want to share a story of your own, please send us an email at cyrtpod@gmail.com. Until next time.
Bye bye.